What if Dehumanizer 2 happened? Hank of the Wicked wasn't the only cancelled Mr Betty Krueger project. Dehumanizer 2 was supposed to be a live-action Jeffrey Keaton film that would have been set in between the events of House and Blood of Jeff the Killer, and would be the sequel to the short film starring Jeffrey Keaton, Dehumanizer. And I think this film was also supposed to be set before or after the Golgo movie that Mr Betty Krueger made. Though unfortunately in 2020, the film was put on the back burner and we got Needles and Smiles for Lost Tapes instead. And in 2022, all of Mr Betty Krueger's creepypasta videos were deleted in favour of a Strange Brew review channel videos, putting the chance of Dehumanizer 2 ever happening to rest. But what if events had unfolded differently? What if we got Dehumanizer 2? This is my take on the story and how I think the story could have gone. This is What If. We start our story off with a moving car parking up next to a house. A family of 3 step out. A family is moved into an old house in Spokane. This was after the town was blown up by Jeff Keaton. And this would take place between the events of the House and Blood of Jeff the Killer. A girl wearing a black leather jacket with purple dyed hair walked past her mother and father and looked up at the house. Peggy's father had gotten a promotion at work, so she and her parents had moved to Spokane. Peggy was hesitant at first, but when she found out that this is where her favourite serial killer, Jeff Keaton, lived, she was more than happy to move. Peggy was a die-hard Jeff the Killer fan, but little was known about him, and that's what was so fascinating about him to her. Well, we finally have our own home, Peggy's father explained. Well, it's better than our old apartment, Peggy's mother concluded. Peggy surveyed her surroundings and sighed. Another school, new bullies, she mumbled. It's here where we learn how she was bullied in her old school for being what the kids called an emo freak, and partly why Peggy's family had moved was due to Peggy attacking one of the bullies, which Peggy would later say she was defending Jeff's honor. Once the family had all unpacked, Peggy was sat in her room, admiring her Jeff the Killer fan art. She had been a fan of the character since she'd read all those urban legends about him. Some said that the bullying had caused Jeff to snap, while others said that he was always a sadistic monster. Peggy never cared though, she just admired him. She could remember how she'd found out that Jeff had died during the Spokane explosion. She didn't quite believe it though, as there had been recent reports of the killer being sighted. There was a knock on Peggy's bedroom door and in came her mother, and it's here where we learn more about their relationship. Peggy and her mother never got along because Peggy's mother and father didn't approve of their daughter's obsession with the serial killer. Can you come downstairs? We're going to meet the neighbors, Peggy's mother told her daughter. Peggy sighed and rested her head back on her new pillow. Do we have to? She moaned. Mrs. Ray took one look at her daughter and then saw the Jeff the Killer fan art on her phone. She sighed and sat on her daughter's bed. Sweetheart, why are you so obsessed with this serial killer? She asked. Peggy sat up and gave her mother a look of annoyance. It's not an obsession, Mom. I'm just fascinated by the stories and urban legends. Peggy's mother rolled her eyes and stood back up before saying firmly, "Well, it's time for your obsession to end. It's unhealthy, Peggy." Peggy stood up defiantly and said to her mother, "Look, I love Jeff the Killer, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now get out." Mrs. Ray gave her daughter a disappointed look and marched out of the bedroom. Peggy slammed the door and sat back on her bed before pulling out her phone. She typed in the channel Baptism on Fire and saw that they'd uploaded a new video about Jeff. She watched it, and it was about the host making fun of the perception that the media has on Jeff the Killer, and whether or not his last name is Woods or Keaton. Then Peggy decided to do some research on the killer. There were so many urban legends on the killer, but none seemed to match what really happened. Peggy looked at news articles about a 17-year-old boy who'd been burnt at a birthday party after moving to Spokane, when Peggy got an idea. She would find Jeff the Killer and ask him personally about what really happened. We can get our first experience of Jeff Keaton. He would be ending another victim's life in the name of Zorgo. "You've done well, my child. You're almost done," the demon said from behind the wall. Jeff giggled and said nonchalantly, "Well, you know me, always chilling and always killing." Zorgo chuckled and said in a calm whisper, "Now, go and visit the home of Peggy Lee Ray. I think she'll be a great disciple for our cause." Jeff nodded and quietly said, "Yes, Master," before walking off into the night. Back at the house of the Ray family, Peggy was having food with her family, planning in her head when she was going to sneak out and search for her idol. Her father tried to make conversation. "So, Peg, what do you think of the new house?" Peggy was silent, but eventually said in a quiet tone, "It's alright, I guess. I haven't seen Jeff yet, so that's not great." There was an awkward silence before Mrs. Ray cleared her throat and said cheerfully, "Are you looking forward to going to your new school?" Peggy said nothing and kept eating. She had not been looking forward to school. She knew there would be more bullying for her, quote, obsession, and she wouldn't make any new friends. Mr. and Mrs. Ray looked at one another in dismay. Their daughter had always been antisocial. Sometimes she would lash out at them, particularly after a bad day at school, or if she was being reprimanded for her bad grades. The three of them said nothing after that and just kept eating. That evening, while her parents were asleep, Peggy snuck out of the house and walked down the dark streets of Spokane. She decided that the first place she'd look was the mine where Jeff had supposedly died in. Peggy used Google Maps to find where she needed to go. She walked for a half hour until she reached the abandoned mine shaft. Peggy slowly approached the tunnel and went inside. She turned on her phone torch and rotated it around the dark mine. "Jeff," she called. "I heard you died here. I don't believe that you're dead, though. I want to know what really happened to you." We would get a montage of Peggy searching every bit of Spokane with no luck. Tired, she decided to head back home and try again tomorrow. She was annoyed and frustrated that all of those rumors of Jeff being alive could be false. Meanwhile, Jeff headed towards the house, which Gallagher had informed was the Ray household. He approached the front door and tried to open it, but it was locked. Then he saw an open window and slowly approached it. He then opened the window a little bit more and climbed through. He found himself in the living room. Jeff surveyed his surroundings, then headed out of the living room and slowly went up the stairs. Meanwhile, Peggy approached the house and unlocked the door with her key. She headed inside and thought she could hear movement from upstairs. Thinking that it was her parents worrying about her, Peggy quickly headed up the stairs. Jeff wandered through the hallway until he reached a bedroom with the door slightly open. He peered inside and saw a couple sleeping in the same bed. "These must be your parents," he muttered. He slowly opened the bedroom door and then approached the couple. He pulled out a knife and stabbed it into the woman's head. He then slit her throat and drew his attention to the woman's husband. He went around to the other side of the bed and stabbed the man in the stomach after whispering, "Go to sleep." He then heard a female voice from behind say, "Oh my God." Jeff turned around to see the shocked Peggy standing in the doorway. You're Jeffrey Keaton!" Peggy exclaimed. Jeff only looked at this young girl and thought to himself that this must be one of his fangirls, judging from the way she was dressed. Then he said to her, "In the rotting flesh." Peggy slowly approached Jeff and touched his face. Then she pinched herself to make sure she wasn't dreaming. Then, when she finally realized this was reality, she said in a tone of awe, "I've heard all the stories about you. I want to know your real story. What really happened the night you became Jeff the Killer?" Jeff was surprised that this girl didn't seem to care that he'd just murdered her parents. But then said, "Well, you're a fan, huh? Well, let me tell you everything." Then Jeff proceeded to tell Peggy the whole story of how he'd become a killer. He then finished with, "And no, I don't live in a mansion with Slender Man and eat cheesecake, and I am not emo." You have expected Peggy to be disappointed to learn that he'd become a killer by choice, and that he wasn't who she'd looked up to all this time. But to his surprise, she blurted out, "I want to be a killer like you." Jeff was taken aback by this statement, but eventually responded with one question. "Do you have what it takes to fully give in to your urges?" Peggy nodded and Jeff tilted his head. "Well, you know what you signed up for." Then Jeff withdrew his knife and knocked out Peggy with the butt of the handle. Peggy fell to the ground and Jeff picked up her unconscious body and carried her out of the house. Peggy woke up. She surveyed her surroundings and saw that she was in a kind of garage. She was tied to a chair and Jeff was standing over her. "I'm glad you're awake. Sorry that I had to knock you out, but you probably would have backed out if you knew what I'm about to do," he told her. Peggy was nervous, but knew what had to be done. Jeff leaned in and withdrew his knife before whispering, "This is gonna hurt a lot." Then he plunged the knife into Peggy's left cheek and sliced it open to make her smile. Then he proceeded to cut open the right cheek. Peggy gritted her teeth, trying not to scream in pain. Once Jeff was done, he stood back to admire his handiwork. His hands and already blood-stained hoodie were now stained with fresh blood. "Presto!" he exclaimed before doing an Italian chef's kiss. Peggy looked up at her idol, her cheeks now cut open to resemble a smile just like his, including some words from Steve Slater condemning teenagers these days for idolizing messed up people. Jeff was enjoying his time with Peggy, but then he remembered his mission to summon Zargo. Then he thought that maybe he could use Peggy to bring in more victims. So Jeff and Peggy would go on killing more people and take their bodies to the Spokane mortuary. Jeff and Peggy sat on a bench after their killing spree. We would get a heartfelt conversation with the two that would be bittersweet since Jeff doesn't care about Peggy. You know, I haven't been this happy since I found out I had a sister, Jeff told the fangirl. Peggy was confused and questioned Jeff about his sister, so Jeff told her about his sister Jane, who refused to join him in his killing sprees, and his brother, who had died after the Ferguson's asylum breakout. Peggy was confused, thinking that Jane was supposedly his neighbor, and his brother's name was Lou, not David. Jeff told her that there was a common misconception in the media. Peggy looked at Jeff, and she started to feel butterflies in her stomach. Then she said shyly, "Jeff, I think I love you." Jeff was taken aback. Then he played along, playing into Peggy's infatuation for him, and said, "I love you too, Peggy." They looked at one another and started to make out, which escalated into sweet love. We can get some moments of the twisted couple bonding in their twisted ways, and Jeff even starts to like Peggy, but then he's reminded of the mission and keeps focused on that. That night, Peggy and Jeff fell asleep in one of the bedrooms of the mortuary house, and Peggy woke to see that Jeff wasn't sleeping next to her. She got up and wandered out of the room. Suddenly, Peggy heard Jeff speaking. "I'm not getting distracted," she heard him say. "I'm using the crazy bitch to bring in more victims. I don't really love her." Peggy froze, and the color drained from her face. She stepped inside and confronted Jeff. The mad Keaton turned around, and he and Peggy got into a fight. "Why are you surprised?" Jeff questioned. "My name is Jeff the Killer. I rarely feel anything for anyone." Peggy's eyes welled with tears, and she backed away. "Everyone was right," she whispered. "You're a monster." Then she turned and ran off. Jeff rolled his eyes and pulled out his knife. "Here we go," she muttered before running after Peggy. Peggy ran through the house, hoping to not get caught. She turned back to see Jeff running after her, then faced forward again. She could see the front door, but before she could reach in time, Peggy tripped and fell. She turned onto her back to see Jeff smiling sadistically down at her. "I warned you what you were getting into," he shouted. Tears started to trickle down Peggy's sliced cheeks, and she begged for her life. Jeff tilted his head with pity and shouted, "Go to sleep!" before plunging his knife into the fangirl's stomach, stabbing her over and over before finally slitting her throat. Jeff stared down at the body of his fan, now covered in fresh blood. He started to cry quietly and he fell onto his knees, but then the crying turned into a loud, horribly sadistic laughter. He stood back up and then remarked, "This is why you should never meet your heroes." He then scooped Peggy's body up in his arms and went to dispose of the corpse. Once that was done, Jeff wandered over to the black ooze on the wall and said cheerfully, "It is done." The voice of Lolgo chuckled coldly. Well done, my child. Now, go and kill more people in my name. Jeff nodded and said, yes, master, before walking out of the house and into the night, ready for his next killing spree. And that was my take on DEHUMANIZER 2. Honestly, if it felt a little bit rushed, or if the character dynamic between Jeff and Peggy, or Peggy and her family wasn't in depth or that deep, or developed very well, I apologize. This was kind of written in a rush because I wanted to get it out there, and I didn't want to make it too long, otherwise it would take a lot of my time, and I wouldn't be able to get around to making other October-related videos. But that's my take on DEHUMANIZER 2. I was kind of going for a bit of a Bride of Chucky approach, but with my own take on the story. That's how I always imagined the story playing out. And again, the reason why it might not be very long is because I imagined as well DEHUMANIZER 2 being maybe a 30, 40 minute, maybe even 50-minute short film. I never really imagined it being an hour longer. But tell me what you guys think in the comments. Tell me what your idea for DEHUMANIZER 2 would be. And I will see you on the next video at HARRYWEEN. And remember, if you're gonna have to, be sure to like this video, share, and subscribe. See you later.